Hello and welcome to this episode of Self-Made. I'm your host, Dee Brown CEO. Joining me on the show today is businessman and entrepreneur, Greg Edwards. Greg, welcome to Self-Made. Glad to have you on the show.
Dee, thanks for having me.
No, absolutely. Hey, on this show, Greg, we like to let our viewers understand our guest journey to where they are. So I would like to start by just learning a little bit about your childhood, where you grew up and what your childhood was like.
Yeah, so going way back, I grew up in a little town in Iowa called Traer. Went to North Tama Elementary through high school, and it's a tiny town. I had a high school graduating class of 38, and my dad owned an automotive repair and gas station. So that's where I got I think my entrepreneurial spirit from he and an uncle of mine. But yeah, my dad was a mechanic and small business owner, and grew up in this tiny town in Iowa and was always a computer geek, and just have leveraged that through my business career.
So what about high school? What was high school like in a small town class of 38 people?
Yeah, so I was a starter on the wrestling team, and I'm not very athletic, if that tells you anything.
I actually have a son that was a state champion in wrestling.
Really?
Yeah.
What state?
Tennessee.
In Tennessee?
150 weight class.
Oh man, that's a tough weight class.
Yeah, he
at
was
age.
number 2 in the state his 10th grade year, and I think won the state championship 11th and 12th grade year.
That's awesome. Yeah, see, I was never that good. I got beat on. But growing up in a small town in Iowa, it was a great childhood. I can't say anything bad about it other than not being exposed to, I would say, what the rest of the real world is like. We were pretty sheltered.
Yeah. So how did you become interested in technology? I know you mentioned you were a computer geek.
Yeah, so that started in elementary school. We had an Apple IIe computer. This would have been back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And our little school was one of the very first to put in a computer lab in the elementary. And I was the student liaison for that computer lab, and really taught a lot of the administration and teachers how to use the systems.
Yeah.
And was building my own programs and developing when I was about 10. And so progressed from there. Never really looked at it actually as a career. It wasn't something that I thought I wanted to do as a career. But then dropped out of college and needed to get a job, and started at a software company because it was really the only thing that I had any talent at.
Yeah. And so how did your dad influence you in terms of your drive and motivation to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so see, he had a very strong work ethic, but also took time off. And so I can remember a lot of times my dad taking me fishing as a child, and the fact that he was able to take off when the fishing was good. that was something that influenced me, and from a young age, something that I knew that I wanted that flexibility to be able to spend time with my kids when they were the age that I was. So I remember that from probably the age of 12 or so, and knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur at that young age.
So when you graduated high school, you talked about you started college and dropped out. So just kind of tell us a little bit about your college experience, but then also kind of what led to you deciding to drop out.
Yeah. So the reason that I dropped out, I actually had a child when I was 20, and so dropped out and actually got a job working in a factory, working third shift in a factory, because it was really the only thing that I could get a job doing at that point, and needed some income. And so that was really a pivotal point in my life, not only becoming a father at the age of 20, but then also working in a factory and working third shift in a factory, and realizing that I knew that wasn't what I wanted for my life. I did drop out of college at that point. And then that's when I got a job with a software company that took a chance on me, and worked my way up pretty quickly within that software company, and eventually quit and started my own network consulting company at 24.
So what was what happened in your life, or what was the moment that you realized that you were going to go from being an employee and having that security of a paycheck every week or every 2 weeks to wanting to transition into an entrepreneur and open your own business?
So I knew that probably from the age of 12 or 14. Like, that was something that I knew that I would do. I just wasn't sure what or how. And so after I started with a software company, it was an insurance software company, I realized that was something that I certainly had a calling for, and something that I wanted to do as a career. And so then figuring out how to transition into starting my own company. And that was in 1998. So Y2K was coming up, and essentially every computer system had to be replaced at that point, in 98 and 99. And I started my own network consulting business, having really no idea what I was doing, and at 24. But there was much more work to do than there were capable bodies to do it. And so I was immediately made a lot more money, and spent a lot more time working at that age, but really cut my chops on installing networking systems and upgrading everything for Y2K, and that was in the Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and Iowa City, Iowa area.
So what were some of the challenges that you faced, just, transitioning from being an employee, now you own your own company, you eat what you kill, and so what were some of those challenges that you faced starting a new company?
Yeah, so I mean, it was really the unknown, and this sounds, I don't want to make entrepreneurship sound easy, because it's not, and I've had many failures since then, but that start was the easiest of my entrepreneurial career. And again, it was luck and talent and timing that allowed for that. And I had some really great clients that were willing to take a chance on me early on. And companies that I can remember being 24 and sitting in boardrooms with these seasoned executives and going over their annual budgets and what they needed to upgrade for their technology systems, and looking back, had no reservations, no nervousness about doing it. It was, and I don't know exactly how or why that was the case, but it was something that I think I was preconditioned for, because of that knowing that I wanted to be an entrepreneur from the age of 14, and this was the natural progression to do that.
So, what was your next, business move after starting your networking company? What was the next business that you went into?
Yep. So the next business, and this was built out of that technical managed services business, was an offsite backup and disaster recovery company. And so this was right at the beginning of what's now the cloud. So this was pre-cloud, but same kind of distributed computing systems. And what we were doing within the IT company, we would keep people's tape backups. This is how far this goes back. We'd keep their tape backups and systems to be able to bring them up and have them live in our office. And so what we did is transition that to a cloud, pre-cloud environment, and it was offsite backup and disaster recovery, where we would, if a company's system went down, we would bring it up in our private cloud environment. And this was back in 2007. So really, people didn't start talking about the cloud as the cloud until about 2010, 2012 timeframe.
Yeah.
And during Hurricane Sandy, which was in 2012, we had 7 simultaneous recoveries that we did for companies in New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania that were taken down because of Hurricane Sandy. Had them up and running in less than 2 hours, and their employees were able to work completely remotely before remote working was what it is today.
Right.
And really before the cloud applications even. And so that was an interesting business. That company was my first exit that I sold to a publicly traded company in 2016, and then started Canauri shortly after that. So
tell me more about Canauri, what you all do, and what was your vision behind starting the company?
Yeah, so at the offsite backup company, our engineers were doing recoveries because of ransomware. So these cyber attacks called ransomware. We were doing recoveries because of ransomware more often than we were for all the natural disasters, hardware failures, everything that we normally would have done recoveries for. We were now doing them because of cyber attacks. And so I saw that in the offsite backup company and recognized that cybersecurity was going to become even more of a problem. And so once I sold the offsite backup company, a company called Access Backup, once I sold that, I knew that I wanted to start a cybersecurity firm, and that started out as what's called an MSSP, a managed security services practice. Mm-hmm. And we used off-the-shelf tools for that, but we still were having clients getting hit by ransomware, even with best of the best tools and best practices. And so we built what is now Canauri. We built that in-house and used it for our clients at the managed security business, and then split that off as its own entity, and is what is Canauri today. And so it is an anti-ransomware tool that watches for the action of encryption that gets past the other security tools. Yeah. And once that ransomware is actively running, we detect, isolate, and kill it.
So what are some of the, I guess, horror stories you've seen in the industry that you've had to come in and resolve?
Yeah, so we're not a incident response company, but I get called into incident responses just because of the nature of what I do and the network that I have. And so, one of the worst actually was an individual that called in to the offsite backup company, and this is before starting Canauri, and they were not a client of the backup company, but they had been hit by a ransomware attack, were completely down. This was a manufacturing company, and it was the founder that was calling me and was in tears over the fact that he didn't by that point, he found me online. I had no idea who this person was, but ultimately got through to me. And he was literally in tears because I thought that he probably was going to lose his business because all of his files had been encrypted. He didn't have good backups. And wow. I mean, imagine going into your office and having no data, none of your systems, everything that you had built for how many ever number of years wiped out.
So what are some of the things that business owners large and small, can do to help protect themselves from ransomware and cyber attacks?
Well, so install Canauri. It's number one. But it's a lot of best practices and what we call defense in depth. And that's it. That defense in depth is if they get through one layer of protection, you've got another layer and another layer and another layer, and then resiliency to fall back on. And so some of those things that need to be being done are patch management, number one. So that's updating the software that's on your systems to make sure that these cyber attackers can't exploit known vulnerabilities. And that is critical and something that every CEO should be seeing on a monthly basis, a report from their IT department of what's being patched and that all of the systems are up to date. So then a next generation antivirus and what's called an endpoint detection and response system. So it's like a video recording system for your network where it's recording everything, and then it uses AI to look for what we call indicators of compromise and be able to detect and stop breaches that are in action. And then, I'm giving a high level of all of the things, but configuration best practices, making sure that your firewalls are properly locked down, then backup and making sure you have resiliency if all of those things fail, that you then can recover. And it's amazing how many companies don't test their backup systems. So until a backup system has been tested and recovery is successful, then I would not consider any backup system to be safe.
Wow. So from a business perspective, getting to where you are now today with Canauri, have there been any individuals that were instrumental in either mentoring you or helping you along the way to get to where you are?
Yeah, so I have a mentor by the name of Kurt Nelson, he's been a mentor of mine for almost 20 years now, and with a group called the Entrepreneurial Development Center based out of Cedar Rapids. And he's one that it's not always the feedback I want, but it's the feedback that I need.
Right.
And is always honest and always straightforward. And that, I think, as an entrepreneur, probably at least the first 5 years, I would say, arrogant enough that I thought I knew everything. And I think part of that was age, but didn't have that mentor at that point to really help guide me. And now, I meet with him monthly, and we review the business and talk through. Some days it's just crying on his shoulder. Some days it's asking for advice.
Right. And you mentioned that he gives you advice, and oftentimes it may not be what you want to hear, but it's what you need to hear. How important is it for entrepreneurs or people that are trying to do anything in life to be successful? How important is it for them to have someone who can provide them honest and sincere feedback?
Yeah, I think it's critical. Like it sounds like a no-brainer, but some entrepreneurs are, again, and I think it's that, not necessarily arrogance, but it's the overconfidence to think that we know everything and we don't need that outside help. And it is really hard to see your own problems. Yeah. And having that sounding board that's not inside your business to look at things objectively, I think is critical. Yeah.
If you had to provide, I guess, some advice for a young entrepreneur that's getting ready to, start along this journey of, being out there and trying to make things happen for yourself, what advice would you give?
So the biggest thing is to take action. And go do it. Like you can't. You absolutely need to plan and prepare, but you can plan and prepare yourself into non-action and never take action. So go out and find that first client and go go do it. And some of it because every plan that you create is going to adjust and going to change, and you're going to have failures, and you have to go and find out what those failure points are. And if you just plan and don't ever take the action, then it's never going to happen. Never going to happen.
Right. Yeah. Some people convince themselves to wait for that perfect opportunity, and I don't think that for most of us the opportunity is never perfect. So you have to make a plan and just execute and move forward on it. But my next question for you is, as it relates to Canauri, what do you have? Your plans for the future in terms of growth and what you want for the company.
Yeah. So ultimately, the goal will be to exit from that company. And really what Canauri is a point product that needs to be absorbed and pulled into a larger security stack. And when I call it a point product, what I mean by that is that it's a very not niche, but very specific product to stop a very specific problem. And there's lots of those within the security space right now where differing kinds of companies like Canauri have built products to stop different specific kinds of cyber attacks, and that's exactly what Canauri is. So ultimately we'll exit to a larger cybersecurity company that hopefully will be purchased by a household name.
And so what are you doing though as the chief technology officer and founder? What are you doing to position the company so that you would be attractive to a larger conglomerate that may want to acquire you and add you to their product lineup?
Yeah, so a few things. So we have patent pending right now for our algorithm and our detection method. So that protecting the intellectual property is really important within our space. So doing that, ensuring that sales continue, because that's one of the primary drivers of the valuation, is that growth over time. And then really we're very the reason that I'm able to share this is because we're very transparent with all of our employees of what we're doing, where we're going, and what the future of the company is. And so everyone is aware that that is the ultimate goal from this. And so doing all of those things, making sure our processes are in place. We're going through what's called SOC 2 certification right now. We'll finish that in mid-March and be SOC 2 certified, which really is a step to ensure that you're proving that you're doing the right things from a process and security standpoint.
Yep. And you mentioned transparency with your employees. How many employees do you all have? And talk to me about, as the owner of the company, how important it is to maintain that transparency and good employee-employee relationships.
Yeah, so there are 11 of us, so a small company, but that transparency is something that in every business that I've owned that I've strived to do. You don't always necessarily achieve it, and whether that's through just not communicating effectively or intentional or unintentional, but having that transparency, I think, is critical, especially in a small business. As the company gets larger and larger, it's hard to have that transparency across every employee. But I think it's crucial to the success of small businesses to be transparent with everyone. Right.
And so for you, Greg, what do you want your legacy to be in this technology space or this space of being an entrepreneur? What would you like your legacy to be?
Yeah, so from a legacy standpoint, I think that being known as someone that knew what was coming. So the next thing that I have been able to do successful so far, and being known for that, and really helping to push the employees that I have to be able to move on to the next thing. So that's really where I see my legacy in entrepreneurship being is number one, in knowing the technologies that are coming next and being able to create a company to serve that need, and then also being a partner with my employees so that they come away better when they leave.
And as we get ready to wind the show down, I want to just ask you one question to play off of what you just stated. What are you doing as the owner to stay on the cutting edge of the next big thing?
Yeah, so it's hard, especially the older that I get. I'm turning 50 this year, and I feel like I'm ancient in the technology world now. So, the big things that are coming up now are AI, of course, and I use ChatGPT pretty much every day.
Greg, I hate to cut you off, but we're about out of time. I definitely appreciate you being on the show. You've been a great guest. And to my viewers, I want to thank you for watching this episode of Self-Made with Dee Brown CEO. And remember, without you, there's no me.